Please welcome to the stage Bayhas Baghdadi of Baghdadi Capital.
Very good morning and welcome to Concordia. This summit is so different because it's having a historic conversation. So my name is Bayhas Baghdadi and I serve as the founder and executive chairman of Baghdadi Capital. I want to tell you a story of a boy born in Damascus back in 1969, raised in a middle-class family, and with a dream of one day taking his family name from a Middle Eastern country to the world. But that boy had no options because he was born in Syria under one of the most aggressive regimes in the world. His life and the lives of millions of Syrians were marred by a corrupt and violent government, and international sanctions limited his opportunities. He saw a world he wanted, but which the Assad regime would never offer. That boy was lucky because his family could afford sending him west, to the land of freedom, to the land of knowledge. His family, his mother, sacrificed the right to raise their child to allow him to thrive. His mother told him, "Son, this regime will not last forever, and you, boy, need to go after your dreams because one day you or your children may see the collapse of that regime." That boy worked and built from scratch a name for himself and his family, far away from his beloved Syria. He got a new nationality and found success in the UK, Europe, the US, and other places, but not in his beloved Syria. He dreamed about a free Syria, a Syria no different to the US. Yes, the US, the land of freedom, the boy's country of inspiration, where people can talk freely about politics, about business, about religion, without the fear of having the Secret Service of a dark regime watching, even in the middle of the night, what their fellow citizens were dreaming. Almost 6 decades, ladies and gentlemen, he waited. 6 decades of oppression, of physical and mental abuse, a place where you could not even breathe without having to pay to someone for your right to exist. Last year, on November 29th, that boy, while watching the news a few blocks away from this hotel where we stand today, ladies and gentlemen, he started feeling in the deepest part of his soul that his mom's vision was about to happen. The way to freedom, although it might have taken too long, but it was undoubtedly coming. A few days later, while he was waiting at JFK Airport to fly to Spain on the 7th of December, a late night flight, it was already the 8th of December in Syria. With his AirPods on, he was praying to God not to take away from him the privilege of watching live the liberation of Damascus from the tyranny and darkness. And God in his mercy gave that boy that moment of glory of his life when he listened to Hussein al-Sheikh, a journalist from Al Arabiya News, saying in Arabic, "The time is now 6:18 in the morning in Damascus. Syria without Bashar al-Assad." Mommy, it is happening. Mommy, my God have you in his glory. Syria is free. The sun is about to shine, and the hidden dreams of millions of Syrians for decades can now come true. Ladies and gentlemen, that boy was given the greatest honor of his life to stand in front of you and the free world today and introduce the hero, the man that brought freedom back to Syria, the man that brought back to the pride of being Syrian to all Syrians in the homeland and overseas, the man that will lead all Syrians to a new era. Mr. President, welcome to the US, the land of freedom. Welcome to the land of democracy. Welcome to the land of dreams. Together, we acknowledge all the sacrifices you have made to return Syria to all Syrians. And we all acknowledge the challenges that you will face in leading Syria to the shining future ahead of us. JFK said once, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask yourself what you can do for your country. Mr. President, you have brought back freedom and liberty to all Syrians. You brought Syria back to its natural place in the world. Paraphrasing JFK, I want to leave the stage by saying, on behalf of all Syrians in the homeland and overseas, thank you, Mr. President. My story is just one of many that bring hope to people for the first time. It is our time to ask ourselves what we can do for Syria now that you, Mr. President, brought back Syria to all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to introduce you to the President of Syria, His Excellency, Mr. Ahmed al-Sharaa, and to General David Petraeus.
Well, good morning to you all. We gather at a moment when the global order is being reshaped by conflict, competition, diplomacy, and urgent demands of reconstruction. Few places embody these challenges more starkly than Syria, a nation emerging from well over a decade of devastating civil war, political upheaval, and humanitarian crisis, and from more than 50 years of brutal rule by the murderous Hafez al-Assad and his son Bashar. Today's conversation, however, will not be about Syria's past. Rather, is it about the choices and challenges ahead for Syria's governance, for its people's security and dignity, and for its place in the international community. We will explore the delicate balance between reconciliation and justice, the rebuilding of shattered institutions, and the role of regional and global actors in shaping Syria's future. For this conversation, it is obviously my privilege to interview His Excellency Ahmed al-Sharaa, President of the Syrian Arab Republic since January 2025. Born in Riyadh in 1982 and raised in Damascus, President al-Sharaa rose to prominence as a rebel commander during the Syrian civil war and ultimately built and then led the force that toppled the Assad government in late 2024. His trajectory from insurgent leader to head of state has been one of the most dramatic political transformations in recent Middle Eastern history. Today, he presides over nearly 25 million people in a country at a crossroads, navigating the demands of establishing security and governance, and also overseeing reconstruction, the return of displaced Syrians, and the challenges of reconciling deeply divided communities. Please join again in welcoming President Ahmed al-Sharaa to the stage. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid Rais.
Ahlan wa sahlan.
Ahlan wa sahlan. And Sharafna Sayyidi. As you know, Mr. President, I spent over 37 years in the U.S. Army, and I was a soldier, not a diplomat. So I hope you'll forgive me if I speak with the directness of the old soldier that I am as I get the first question out of the way. Because the fact is that we were on different sides when I was commanding the surge in Iraq. You were, of course, detained by U.S. forces for some 5 years, including, again, when I was the 4-star there. And here you are now as the president of Syria, which your forces liberated from the murderous Bashar al-Assad regime, to participate in your first UN General Assembly as the president of your country. Earlier this year, you met the President of the United States among many other world leaders. Please help us understand how you got From Al-Qaeda in Iraq 20 years ago to where you are today, Syria's head of state on stage in New York City.
I welcome you. It is good that at a time we were in the combat and then we now move to the discourse. We moved from war to discourse. Yes, sir. Someone who went through war is one who knows most the importance of peace. First, the past has its rules when it comes down to traditions and traditions and the customs of that phase. When we want to when we want to judge it, we have to judge it based on these phases. We cannot judge the past based on the rules of today, and we cannot judge today based on the rules of the past. Today, now, we have a new phase that's special. The region, there was an occupation of Iraq. There has been a lot of conflicts in the area. In Palestine, Syria was facing a lot of challenges and was threatened. And the phase at that time and the awareness, all these factors were contributing to the choices of that phase. What's important, the intent was clear when it comes down to protecting and defending people and defending human rights, the women, the children, from the injustice that was taking place in the region. Perhaps there were some mistakes. Sometimes in a person's journey, there are some mistakes, but what's important is to focus on defending people from the threats that they face, especially from the instability that could take place in any region. Our commitment to that line is what brought us here today to the place we're in, sitting here among allies and friends.
Well, again, as a former commander of forces in two different wars, in fact, I'm fascinated by your skill in putting together a force, and I assume recruiting, training, equipping, conducting leader development courses and so forth, to build a force that could rapidly take Aleppo, and then of course Hama is open, Homs, and the road to Damascus is clear, and you topple a regime that had been in control of your country for 50 years. How did you do this? And again, how did you organize, train, equip this force, and then lead it to this stunning outcome?
First of all, you as a military leader, you know there are different military rules. First, the balance of power does not depend on the tools or whatever you have at your disposal. There are many countries where there is a conflict, and small groups can overthrow a president or a ruler. So what a leader needs is optimism, a belief, a deep belief that you are defending a noble cause, you're protecting a country, you're defending people who were massacred, who were subjected to bombing campaigns, children who were killed, a lot of bombing, a lot of abductions, a lot of sexual violence. There is about there are about a million people who were killed. So actually what we were defending was a noble case, a case that deserved to be supported. Regarding the military level, of course, we were confronting a large country like Russia, who had military aviation who were much more equipped than us, and there were different factions like Hezbollah on the ground, and all these enemy factions were confronted thanks to our will by choosing the right time, the right place to enter the country, by taking key positions, tactical and strategical action night and day, and the military forces be supported by civilians. We had institutions like schools and different institutions were providing us with the support and help, like in Idlib. These institutions were trained by the military, and therefore we have accumulated experience, and we were ready at one point to reach Damascus in a very short time and with the least cost possible.
Well, your skills, again, in organizing and then leading that force are hugely impressive. But despite all that you have achieved as a military leader, and it is extraordinary, and now as a statesman, there are understandably some who are skeptical. What do you say to reassure those who wonder if you will follow through on your commitment to unify Syria and to ensure not just majority rule, but also minority rights, a commitment that is particularly important given the many ethnic, sectarian, tribal, and other elements in your country?
When I converse with a military commander, I have to stick to military rules. When you know in war, it is difficult for one to completely avoid civilians when it comes down to military operations. At times there are casualties and losses. But during the 11 days, the fight for liberation, there has been mercy and kindness to people. There has been a lot of forgiveness, and therefore it was less costly. Also, the conduct of the people during hot conflict and hot fighting, there was a care to defend and protect the people, and at the same time, there was a commitment to liberating military spots from the forces that they face. And we abide to the same conduct when it comes down to governing. And Syria, in a short period of time, they were talking about, we had somebody here speaking about his experience and being deprived from Syria over 60 years. The former regime worked on dividing the people, and there was a lot of ethnic and sectarian, and Syria was one of the areas with a lot of focus when it comes down to sectarianism. There has been a lot of violations, and it worked on scaring the people in order to oppress them. But we cannot solve all the problems right away at once, but gradually we reach. Also, after the collapse of the former regime, the society has started to come together around the current presidency, and then at times, however, there was a bit of sectarianism that's reminiscent from the old regime. But the sound mind would help us to face the problems and deal with each problem separately. One of the priorities for this phase is the stability and the security in Syria, and through the unification of the Syrian people and the Syrian land and limiting weapons, we are going to enhance the security, and there's a good connection with the economic development, between economic development and security stability.
Sayed Reis, given how devastated Syria has been by the terrible civil war of well over a decade, how do you intend to achieve your vision for Syria, and what do you seek from the United States and the West to help you achieve that?
There has been a severance of relationship between Syria and the United States over the past time. But however, the collapse of the former regime gave a new opportunity as a new historical phase. The region has suffered over 60 years, especially over the past, say, 40 years and over the last 14 years of the Civil War. Now there has been a historical transition that gave an opportunity in the region. There has been shared interest between Syria and the West and the United States in the current phase. And if we would like to talk, if we use the language of shared interest, there's a lot of principles that the U.S. and Syria share, and the West in general. I'd like to avoid that Syria only looks for relationships and friendship and donations, but we try to break the restrictions. We have to lift the restrictions and lift the sanctions put on Syria, because these sanctions were put because of the regime of Ahmed al-Assad since 1979, even before we were born, because that was a country that fostered terrorism and such. These sanctions, specifically the Caesar law that was pushed by the American Congress on the former regime because it had tortured and violated human rights on its people. It had committed many violations against the Syrian people. But this is a former regime. This is past. So therefore, these sanctions have to be lifted. And if these sanctions remain with the old regime collapse, then they'll be targeting the people and not the regime, the former regime. I think Syria deserves a new opportunity at life, and Mr. President Donald Trump took a bold decision to lift the sanctions speedily, but it is still pending at the Congress, and the Congress also has to push to better the situation in Syria, because the Syrian people have suffered over the last decades, and the sanctions should not remain because it causes a burden on the people who've already suffered by the oppression of the former regime.
As you noted earlier, Mr. President, since the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad, there have been some tragic sectarian attacks against the Druze community in southwestern Syria and also against the Alawites on the Mediterranean coast. These have included execution-style killings of civilians. How do you respond to those who point to these episodes and argue that your government is not sufficiently protecting Syria's minorities, and that some of your supporters appear to have been taking part in some of this?
I mentioned before that Syria had inherited a lot of conflict and problems, and there are parties that try to raise sectarian divides and violence because they want to interfere in the Syrian matters. And these are parties that are not benefiting. They used to benefit from the former regime, and they benefit from making Syria a place to resolve conflicts and old problems. Of course, there are problems on the coast and also between the Bedouins and the Druze. Through the people who escaped the former regime, the remnants of the old regime, and there has been chaos, and all parties were mistaken, including parts of the government, and therefore we made councils to look into the matters, and for the first time since 60 years, the UN was able to send councils to look up the truth, and Syria will put anybody who makes any violations against civilians in front of the law. And it is important for the country to be at a same distance with all the citizens through the law and only law, not through moods or personal grudges. We are not going to judge people based on their religions or their races. Everybody has the right to live in Syria, and the rule of law is going to be upheld. Any violations that happen in Suwayda or in the coast, we have evaluated these violations, and we send inquiries, and any parties that have created violated are going to be persecuted.
Now, Mr. President, you reached an agreement with the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces in northeastern Syria earlier this year to integrate them into the rest of Syria. These forces are, of course, supported by small elements of the U.S. military, which have been with them since the Syrian Democratic Forces defeated the Islamic State in northeastern Syria. How do you see this situation evolving, and what do you think the long-term relationship between the Syrian Kurds and Damascus should look like?
First of all, we have set out a rule, which is to collect the guns. Only the state could own the guns. And any arms in the hands of civilians could lead to trouble. Therefore, we were very clear. We established a law, and any gun in the hands of a person outside the framework of the law would be punished. And we have been clear on this through conversations. There are different factions in Syria who hold arms, and we try to convince them that we need a unified army that collaborates with the government. We have tried to contain these factions, and we have benefited from the experience of the past years, and therefore we could support the unified armies. And we have 25% of Kurds in the army, and when we sat with the Assad allies, we told them that we have to respect and protect the rights of the Kurds, and this should be set out in the constitution. And we do not want to live what we have lived, the massacres of opposing factions and enemies. There are different regions where people have fled. So we guaranteed the right of return to all of them, to the refugees. We have made sure that we have made it clear that we'll never accept the division of Syria in faction, because this would lead to trouble and risk against neighboring countries such as Iraq. Therefore, we have to reach peaceful solutions. We have to endorse the document related to the implementation of the convention, with the agreement of all the factions, and those supported by Turkey and those supported by Iran. We have to seize the opportunity in order to reorganize Syria, and because this will benefit everybody, all factions, including the Kurds.
Mr. President, the Syrian opposition obviously was euphoric about the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad. But there are obviously questions that they raise about whether you and your political movement will be truly able to achieve a free and open Syria, meaning multi-party elections, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, and other fundamental liberties. How do you reassure them?
While we sit here, Syria is preparing election and coordinating, so all the people are represented in the elections. Syria is a civilized country with culture. It's a country that has many projects with a lot of competence, and people have the right to choose who's going to rule them or who's going to represent them in the parliament. However, there are specificities to the transitional period during over the next 5 years, because that's a transition between a regime to a new regime, and from a popular revolution like the revolution we just had. Of course, that would need a lot of measures in order to reach stability and safety. These measures would entail time, and we estimate that that time would be about 4 to 5 years. We took many steps over the past period of time. We have filled the vacuum, the power vacuum, and we have started the national discourse between all the different sectors of the people. And we also We have been sharing the authority, and we also have been We have been opening the ground for contribution and participation of the different sectors of society. Also, in the government, there are Kurds, Alawites, Druze, and Christians, and therefore they represent all the different factions of society, and we have made sure that the government is one of competence. After that, we go to the elections, and who's going to represent the people in the elections. And the Syrian reform and rebuilding would need time and different phases, and we are going at a really fast speed in comparison to what really took place in Iraq or what happened in other nations like Germany. They needed a time to regain their stability after the World War II, and also the French, they needed many long years after the French Revolution to reach stability. In comparison to these experiences, we are going at a fast speed, and we are dealing with special laws that would rule during that transitional time on the premises that Syria is not yet stable. And then after that, we take these laws and we compare them to the advanced and developed nations, and we adjust them. Also, that would give that the rule would be if we take into account the specificity and how special this transitional period is.
It is very impressive, I must say, Mr. President. Russia, the Iranians, Lebanese Hezbollah were, of course, key foreign backers of the Bashar al-Assad regime. You fought against them over the past several years. How is your relationship with them evolving now?
Syria has taken the policy since before the start of the fight. They were taken into account after the collapse of the regime that they want to maintain a calm relationships with the region and the world in general. When it comes down to Iran and Hezbollah and Russia, but in general, the nation has to work in a strategic manner, and it should not be one of reaction. But there are a strategic interest for the country. Russia is a big country, and it has a stake in dealing with the Syrian case over 70 or 75 years. Syria is heading towards so that Syria would not be a threat to any country when it comes down to the Russian presence or any other country. Even in the militias that used to be present on Syrian land, and we mentioned that in many occasions, and we said that Syria will not be a threat to the region or any country. Any party that has interest that aligns with that of Syria, taking into account that the Syrian sovereignty will take priority, and its stability and its security. On that, we build partnerships with different countries around the world. Syria needs reform, needs rebuilding, and that rebuilding will take a long time. Therefore, it is important to keep calm and stable relationships with the international community and the regional community as well.
There has been some speculation, Mr. President, about the possibility that Syria could join the Abraham Accords with the Israelis, as have the Emiratis and other countries. In fact, there are reports of talks between your government and that in Jerusalem. I'm reminded of an old American expression that only President Richard Nixon, the ultimate Cold Warrior, could go to Communist China and establish diplomatic relations. This begs the question, of course, could President Ahmed al-Sharaa someday go to Jerusalem?
There is a big difference between Syria and those members in the Abrahamian Accords. Syria is different, and those who are part of the accord, parties to the Abrahamian Accords, are not neighbors to Israel. For instance, Syria, as a neighbor, has been subjected to over 1,000 raids, strikes, and incursions, Israeli incursions in Syria from the Golan Heights, and many were killed. So what applies to the parties in the Abrahamian Accords does not apply to Syria. Moreover, Syria is trying to set a calm atmosphere and avoid any fighting or confrontation with any party. Meanwhile, Syria has to be respected in this new era. There are different phases of negotiations with Israel, and this to go back to the truth of 1974. If there are any security fears, there are mediators like the United States that could calm the fears. Israel was afraid of Syria, whereas Syria is the one to fear incursions and attacks from Israel. So if calming the situation will succeed, we will be able to discuss the situation related to the Golan Heights and other issues. And there is a huge anger in view of what's going on in Gaza, not only in Syria, but in the world, in the entire world. And of course, this has an impact on our position towards Israel. We just had our revolution. We are trying to be the voice of the people, and most of the peace accords with Israel were made with previous regimes. So we have to try to find new approaches in order for these accords or treaties, in order for them to last longer, because previous treaties were violated. For instance, under late President Sadat or late King Hussein, many accords and treaties were signed with Israel, but they were violated. Therefore, we have to find a new path, taking into account the new reality. Is Israel trying to expand? Is it in an expansion strategy, or is it in a fear strategy? This will dictate.
Issues, Mr. President. And you have talks ongoing now about these issues, Mr. President?
Yes, this course is ongoing regarding peace number 74. I believe that we reached advanced stages, and I hope that that will lead us to an agreement that will keep the sovereignty of Syria and also resolve some of the security fears for Israel.
Mr. President, I have some sense of how tough your job is right now. How much is riding on you personally, and I know you have to be keenly aware of that. The pressure has to be enormous. When people ask me what was it like to command the surge in Iraq, I would respond by saying it was the most grinding experience of my life, but it was also the most important one. So this next one is about you personally. How are you holding up under all this pressure? Are you getting time to do some thinking? Are you getting enough sleep at night? Again, I've been there, and it is so very, very hard. And your many fans, and I am one of them, we do have worries.
First, the Arabs would say a person is strong by his brothers. So I have a good team. I have a big team that helps me with all that I embark on. I also, there's been a nation that's been patient and strong and remained steadfast amid some of the worst wars that were witnessed in this century. I take my power from God, the greatest, and also from the team that backs me up, that helps me with this endeavor. And I also take into account the resilience of the nation and their desire to move forward. Also, I've grown among instability. I am 43 years old, but I spent 25 years of which in conflict, in war, and in hardship. So I'm used to crisis. Crisis has to be managed with the strategic plans, with an open mind, and with flexibility and adaptability. Calm has to take over the person who has to take important decisions, especially when it comes down if that decision has the destiny of a nation tied to it. The person who makes the decision maker has to keep his calm in order to make correct decisions.
No question about it. Mr. President, you are pursuing what many see as an impossible mission, frankly, trying to bring together a country that fractured during the Civil War, striving to revive an economy that was terribly damaged by the previous regime, seeking to forge new relationships with diverse neighbors in a very tough neighborhood. During the situation in Iraq, I was often asked, how is it going? And I would respond that it's all hard all the time, but hard is not hopeless. And in that case, it proved that hard was not hopeless. What is it that gives you hope about your very challenging task?
I believe that my mission in Syria is much more difficult than yours in Iraq. It's a much more difficult in Syria than yours in Iraq. Of course. In Iraq, it was limited, but Syria has faced a lot of destructions over the past years, and we are focusing on economic development, all the policies and building capabilities, all that we it's even the people that we put in the ministries, we chose them we chose businessmen or people who have high expertise in leading economical development, internationally, and who are aware of the international economy and the nature of economy in Syria. We are focused on building and revitalizing the economy. Also, we have a lot of human resources. Syria is a people that love work, and they have diverse expertise. And in its nature, in the genetics of the Syrian people, they are commerce and trades people. So we please lift the sanctions and see what we can reach.
You know, in recent years, I was occasionally asked to assess the different groupings in Syria. And obviously, I assessed that the Islamic State and then Al-Qaeda, that they were not reconcilable. But when I was asked about the organization that you built, HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, I said, I actually believe that we could work with these individuals, that they were nationalists, certainly, yes, a degree of political Islam, but frankly, what you have done since toppling the Bashar al-Assad regime has validated what it is that I assessed it. And I was criticized, by the way, quite considerably. I just want you to tell you, really on behalf of all the people who are here, that this conversation has truly filled me with enormous hope. It has been very, very heartening and illuminating. Your vision is powerful and clear. Your demeanor itself is very impressive as well. And so, again, on behalf of all here and all those that are watching virtually and so forth, We thank you for sharing your vision today. We wish you strength and wisdom in the difficult work ahead. We obviously hope for your success, inshallah, because at the end of the day, your success is our success. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
دائما يقال في التاريخ الأشياء الملفتة للنظر هي الأشياء الغريبة فليس من غرائب الدنيا أن نجلس الآن مع بعض.
Weird for us to sit today and we talk about the future of Syria. I believe that Syria is capable of fixing its problems, and Syria is capable of being part of the international community. Syria today, correct, is might seem weak and vulnerable, but it has a strong influence regionally and internationally. The right choices, our people have suffered from wrong choices by the international world or by the local regimes, but today we make better decisions and we are amid cooperation and transparency from all parties involved, and also there is peace, there's love, there's cordiality with the international community and the Syrian. Today, Syria represents an exceptional model to fix a lot of decisions that were made, a lot of wrong decisions that were made in history that are going to be corrected now, and I believe this is a great opportunity for the both of us in order to rebuild. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا.